Welcome back to another episode. Today's topic is business. Business. So, what is there really to business? You always hear about people having businesses. You always hear about people having personal business. So, what is business exactly? How does it all come together? All right. So, when you think of business, you want to think of a series of transactions that are essentially happening. So, all a transaction is there's an exchange that's happening. Right? So an exchange is, if you give me that you have over there, let's say give me, I like that video game over there. You give me that, and I should give you money for it. And that's business. So it doesn't really matter if the person that I'm buying the video game from is actually a business or it's an individual. It's business. It's the process of conducting transactions. That's essentially what business is. But when you think about business, it really boils down to a few different pieces that I actually wanted to explain to you today. So when you think about business, you have to think about what's actually being exchanged. And usually when you're exchanging anything, you're thinking of exchanging value. So it doesn't really matter what's being exchanged. Whatever is being exchanged, though, is something of value. And that's essentially why the exchange happens in the first place. I wanted something of value, let's say in a video game, so I selected the video game that I wanted, and the seller of that video game also wanted something in exchange of the video game's value. And in that case, I actually gave them money. So the value itself is actually being exchanged, and we're actually conducting business. So when we're actually doing that, there's two main elements anytime you're doing a transaction. It's the value itself. Now, I actually use money in that case, and I'm going to use money as a reference. But all money is, it's an exchange of value. If you remember from any of the other videos, money is simply an exchange of value. And so we're using it as a resource. Since we don't have, let's say, exactly what the seller wants, we use money in exchange for that. So the seller, once they actually receive the money, they can actually purchase whatever they're particularly interested in. So that's essentially how we're using money in that case. We're using money to represent the value with the exchange itself. So in addition to that, we also have this element of time. So when we actually make the exchange, it's not taking a year to do. It's not even taking a day to do. It's taking maybe a few seconds. Once I make the decision, let's say I buy that item, let's say it's online, let's say it's in person, but that transaction happens very quickly. There's a deadline to it. So there's a beginning and there's an end. And the biggest thing with the transaction is it needs to be completed in order for business to have been conducted or finished. In some cases, you may have business that takes a little bit longer for the fact that, let's say, a service was rendered and then a bill was sent, and then that bill eventually gets paid within whatever deadline was agreed upon or decided upon, let's say, by the seller. So you have time and you have money. And once you have those two pieces in place and you're actually conducting a type of transaction, you're conducting business. So we have the definition for business down. So what are some examples or methods for actually exchanging value? Well, let's say I bought the game itself as a gift for my son, since he loves video games. And I gave it to him as a gift for, let's say, doing so well in school. So in that case, I'm exchanging value really in getting the video game to actually exchange that value with my son for appreciation for how well he did in school. Boom, there's his video game. Also in a relationship, you may receive value within a particular relationship. May not cost you anything, but there's an exchange of value going back and forth. A recommendation. So let's say I wanted to get my son something, a video game, but I didn't know what video game to pick. And I didn't really want to spill the beans to him. So maybe I asked for a recommendation of what's the best video game for kids his age that have his particular interests. So that recommendation can provide value for me. Also, if there's a service that's being provided, such as let's say cleaning services or services, such as shipping. Actually, if I bought the video game online, having it shipped to me, that's a service. The product itself, the video game, for the fact that I actually wanted that, someone had to create it to actually create that value. And then last but not least, the experience. My son's probably going to have an awesome experience when he plays a video game. So he sees that experience as something that translates to him doing well in school. He gets really cool experiences. So we have all of those various types of examples, and those are just a few. But just wanted to illustrate some of the examples of exchanging value that are out there. Now, going along with all of that, we have what are called roles. When we're in society, we're each serving a role. within business or series of transactions. And so the position you serve within essentially dictates what you're representing, let's say in regards to a transaction. But it's also a method that can be used to position yourself where you want to be just in regards to business. If you want to use business as a way to grow your wealth, business can actually help you do that. The more transactions that you actually create that, let's say, are in your favor and they're delivering you immense value, because let's say you're doing the same to your customers, that could build up your wealth very quickly. So I wanted to touch on that because business roles are actually incredibly important based on where you want to position yourself for the future. So if you're in school, if you've ever gone to school, you are very familiar with the concept of an employee. That is a fundamental business role. What employees do is they trade their time for money. So when I talked about money and time, I talked about money being a resource for exchanging value, and that's something that is replenishable. You can spend money, but you can bring it back and make it at the same time. But time doesn't work the same way. Time is the most important resource you have, and it is consumable, but you don't replenish it. When you use your time, that's it. You don't get it back. So the unfortunate piece of being an employee is that when you trade your time for money, you're trading time you're not getting back for money. And when you do that, you're actually creating a flow. And the flow essentially allows our society to keep moving like a machine. And I'll call it time flow, or if you heard my Monopoly talk before, I'll call it go flow. Like every time you pass go, you collect your $200. And that's the role that most people actually take. They trade their time, they receive money in exchange for it. And we commonly see this, and most folks, I think, look up to people that are, let's say, professional athletes. Because let's say they're making a lot of money for playing a game by the rules. And we would, let's say, call the best player the MVP. And so as far as the business roles, if you have an employee and they had that mindset of, I'll trade my time for money, their goal is to become an MVP. Or, if they're trying to reach the highest rank of an employee, I would consider that an MVP or a most valuable player. So you'll probably hear me talk a little bit more about MVPs and how that actually works. But that's the first role. The next role is that of a manager. What a manager does is they trade other people's time for money. So instead of, let's say, using their own as a way of trading for money, they actually have a bunch of resources as other people, and they actually use their time to allow their business to be productive, right? So when they do that, they're creating a workflow. And when they create workflow and productivity, that's how their business grows. And managers, I equate them with the boss. So anytime you hear the boss is in charge of people and how they actually use their time when they're at work. And so that's how a manager makes their money. They actually trade other people's time or use other people's time to make money. The third is that of an investor. An investor uses their money and other people's time to make money. So this is usually commonly associated with the cash flow. So if you're looking for money to actually fund an endeavor, this is where investors come from, because they'll put their money to work. And the role that I've defined this as, just within my spectrum, I have MVP, boss. I would call an investor a shark. Why? Because sharks are, they're fierce, right? They're fierce. And they kind of are top of the food chain as far as making things happen. And so when they decide they're going to invest their money into something can start moving along. And so the cash flow piece is really important from the investor. But again, they do something really powerful. They put their money to work. They don't actually have to do the work themselves. They put their money to work with other people's time, and that's how they make more money. Fourth, you have the entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur uses their time and other people's money to make money. And they're really interested in deal flow. So as deals actually come in, they're actually looking to share these deals with investors to get the money, and that's essentially how they're actually getting compensated. And I call entrepreneurs moguls because I say that's the top of the food chain when it comes to entrepreneurs. A mogul is just making things move and making things happen. They have a vision, and they're able to grasp that vision and make it into reality. So anyone that's ever written a book or done something creative and actually brought it into the world, is really an entrepreneur because they're using their time to put something unique out there, and they're getting the support they need in order to get it out to the masses. And last but not least, we have the capitalist. So what does a capitalist do? A capitalist uses other people's money and other people's time to make money. They're really interested in the control flow, right? So in order for, let's say, the monopoly game to work, there needs to be a flow for everything. And as long as there's a flow, the capitalists get paid because they get paid on the ability of business to continue within an environment. So have you ever heard the most powerful element in the game Monopoly? It's the bank. And the bank makes money as long as business continues to be conducted on the monopoly board. So that's what a capitalist really represents. And I refer to them as a relic because they find a way to stick around and not disappear. They're like the remnants on the board. They're like the dinosaurs. They may be old and slow and monolithic, but they know how to keep a system going and they know how to survive. So that's what a capitalist is. And again, I refer to them as a relic. So in going through each of these roles, you actually fulfill one of these roles within your life. And the real question is, where do you actually fall? Now, again, I try to rebrand them a little bit because there's value in each role, especially in how you think. Again, I use MVP, boss, shark, mogul, and relic. And they're all important. They're all needed in order for society to work. But why is that important? You're probably thinking to yourself, man, okay, business, I learned a little bit, but why are these roles important? Why does it really matter? Well, this is something that you probably haven't heard about, but this is something definitely to recognize and to reference. The reason that I'm explaining all this to you is because if you want to reach unlimited potential, you need to be able to take advantage of unlimited resources. Now, for everything that I mentioned, your time is a limited resource. You don't get it back. So whatever you use, whatever decisions you make, that's it. You don't get that time back. So it's constant ticking clock that's kind of ticking down, right? And the more time that you kind of spin your wheels, the less time you're going to have left to do, let's say, the stuff that you want or achieve the goals that you actually want. So if your time's a limited resource, you can only do so much with that. You need to be able to pair it with something that's unlimited. But then again, also look at your money. Your ability to create value, that's also a limited resource as well. You might need your time to do it, or again, you might have a wealth of money with you, but it's capped at some number. It's defined at some number. And for that very reason, it represents a limited resource. You could spend it all. And if you do, and you aren't left with anything, that's the resource that runs out, right? So you have your money and you have your time, both as limited resources. You can only do so much with that. Now, you may be able to do great things, but you have to pair it with something that is unlimited. Now, if you look at other people's time, the more people you gather together, the more time you actually get as far as being able to use other people's time, other people's resources in that sense. And the same thing goes for other people's money. You start using other people's money, then all of a sudden you have an unlimited resource. So other people's time and other people's money create unlimited resources. What that actually can allow you to do is that can allow you to reach unlimited potential in your business because you're using unlimited resources. Now, if you look at everything that's listed, the only business role that does not use unlimited resources is that of an employee. It's pretty powerful, huh? Or the MVP. They use their time. Now, you might have a team context, you might have, a professional athlete that, decides, like a basketball player that, not only uses their skills, but they use it in regards to a team. Well, that's taking everything to another level. And that's why I refer to that as an MVP, because they're able to do some incredible things, but only when they start working together and working with other folks. But if you really look at how all the other business roles work, a manager uses other people's time, an investor uses other people's time, an entrepreneur uses other people's money, and a capitalist uses other people's time and other people's money. They all use unlimited resources, and that's why they're able to do such incredible things as far as the scale or whatever they're actually putting out there. They're able to do it at another level, and it's because they're leveraging unlimited resources. So I'm curious, how do you actually think? Which one of these do you actually fall within? So it just so happens I have a nice test, 7 questions that can tell you exactly where you fall. And you'll only find out at escapethemonopoly.com. So, if you haven't taken the test yet, what's stopping you? All right. Catch you on the next episode.